Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. We are live for another Mealworms and More. We're going to wait till about 4 after and let folks start joining in the meantime. It's cold here this morning, so I have the heater on. Hopefully it does not cause too much noise issues. Oh, I forgot my water. Shoot. Good morning, good morning. We're going to wait till 4 after, let everybody join, then we'll get rolling. Kayla, welcome. If somebody would do the obligatory mic and audio or mic and video check, let me know that everything's working and looking okay. Awesome, thank you, Rodney. Hey, good to hear from you, Rodney. I was thinking about you. Glad to see you out here. Keith, welcome back. Julie, good morning. We got a couple minutes left. I was about a minute late. I was jumping in the farm to turn the exhaust fan on. A little bit of good news, bad news. Bad news is I'm a little sick, but I think I'm over it. Fingers crossed. So I don't anticipate any issues while we're here today. Good news is though, we can go into the farm if we need to. So I packaged up some orders this morning, and that's why I just turned the exhaust fan on to get everything cleared out. And so if we need to, we can go walk in there. Velazar, hello. I still owe you a response. I will get that to you today. It's been a rough week. All right, a couple more minutes. Keith, give us an update on the air quality meter when we get going. You bet. I can definitely do that. I was actually just looking at that when I walked in there. Turned the exhaust fan on because it was a little high. Air quality device. Hello from Georgia. Hello, JD. Thank you very much for your orders. I appreciate it. Hopefully everything's going well. Mohammed, good morning. Maybe good evening. For those of you that are on the other side of the world somewhere. I believe it's late in Australia. Because when it's late here, it's early there right now. Right now. Like, sometimes it isn't, right? Hey, Kai, good morning. All right, we are at 4 after, so we will go ahead and officially get started with our Mealworms and More sessions for today. So good morning, everyone. If you're not aware of who I am, my name is Justin Meyer. Hi. I run Midwest Mealworms here in Ashland, Missouri. I am an admin in the Mealworm Farming Co-op group, and so we're doing a live session from our group today. We try to do one of those a week. I'm on a streak now. I think this might be 4 in a row, so I'm doing good. But this will be recorded by Facebook and posted to the group, along with all of the comments. They'll be visually accessible and replyable in the post once Facebook reviews it and make sure everything is hunky-dory. Then I will peel it and also put it out on my YouTube channel because there's some folks that don't get on Facebook that would still like to be able to see these. So I'll do that as well. The comments don't come across from here over to YouTube. But what we're going to tackle today is any questions you guys have about mealworms, any issues you're having, any successes. We like to hear and see those if we can, so that we can all improve our own colonies and what we're doing here. We've got access to the farm. So I did a couple orders this morning. I need to deliver this afternoon. So I did a couple orders this morning, turned the exhaust fan on, and it should be cleared out here in a few minutes. So we can go in there if we need to. One request from Keith was to look at the Inkbird device that measures air quality, various different measurements and whatnot, so we can go take a look at that. It has been working well now that I switched outlets. So we'll do a full update on that when we go in there. If you guys have any questions, anything you want to chat about, please put it in the comments here. If I don't acknowledge or respond to it, sometimes Facebook doesn't show those to me, so please tag me or DM me on Facebook. and let me know what your question is, and we'll try to tackle it. If there's anything that I can't or don't answer, I do go back and look at the comments afterwards and try to reply to those as well. So let's see. Good morning. Is humidity above 80 bad for pupa? Mohammed, yes. I saw a pretty bad die-off. So I actually did a little experiment in the grow tent we have in the insect room. I think it was a couple months ago, where I tested pupa in a higher humidity and still continued to have. I was struggling with die-off, and so I thought, oh, let's raise the humidity and see what happens. Just a simple test. I had the access to it, so I did that and still saw a good amount of die-off. So I pulled them back out of that grow tent, and then they sat in the mealworm room, which is at about 70% humidity, or was. And then I started having, or have been having some issues with my superworms. Been having some die-off with that, randomly and sporadically. So I talked to a couple of folks, and I actually lowered the humidity in the farm. It's now in the 50s to 60s. It does spike occasionally, especially when we spray our water on the mealworms, obviously, right? But what I've noticed is that it feels like the pupa are doing better. One, because we took them out of the 80% humidity, and two, now that it's lower, I think that they're doing better. We also stopped putting bran in the tray with the pupa, and that also seems to have been beneficial. I've seen an increase in the number of beetles we're able to peel out of the trays whenever we go to do beetle harvest. So I feel like that's working well, and I would say 80 is too high, Mohammed, for the pupa. You'll see just a higher die-off rate. You'll probably have more potential for pathogens and more attraction of other insects to that, because they might get, in that level of humidity, they might get like wet and gross and kind of squishy, because all of that wet matter inside the pupa isn't dissipating and going away. So a lot of folks will have really hard, dry, crusty pupa when their humidity is low. You're going to have the reverse of that. And what that tends to do is draw in other unwanted things into the mealworm colony. So I'd be careful about that. See if there's anything you can do to address that and make it a little bit lower. Karen, hello from Eastern Shore, Maryland. Hello, welcome. Welcome. Dinner time for Velazar. I am getting hungry. It's going to be breakfast for me. I haven't had any breakfast yet, so my first meal of the day will be breakfast at some point, probably around noontime. I don't know if I'm going to get any before I get deliveries rolling and appointments going. So we're going to go into the farm and talk about the air quality sensor. I thought I had the box in here. I don't see it. And then while we're in there, if there's anything else you guys want to see, we can take a look at that. We'll give it a couple more minutes to get the air cleared out a little bit before we head in there. That way I don't have to wear the mask. Once the particulates get down, they've been pretty low. Velazar, I know I need to get you some feedback on what those numbers are. What I've found, the one thing I'm not super stoked about right now is that the app that comes with the Inkbird devices, it allows you to see it remotely, but it doesn't track it, or doesn't keep record of it. And so I have to get the device and physically connect it to a PC to then download. They tell me that the info's in there. You just have to download it to your PC, and then you'll be able to visually see it. So I just haven't had the time to go through and grab that to see how it's going. Visually, though, what I've noticed is the carbon dioxide buildup and the particulate buildup when we're in there working, which makes sense, right? So when we're in there, when the humans are in there, we're breathing the oxygen, we're expelling CO2, and so that's increasing, which makes sense. And then the exhaust is flushing that out and pulling in fresh O2 when it does that. Same thing with the particulates, right? So we're in there moving around, the dust on the ground is moving up. As well as when we're sifting, sorting, harvesting, all that fun stuff, it gets pretty high. I don't know that I've seen it above the 1,000 mark for the parts per million in the farm yet, but I still need to go through and just kind of analyze that data and better understand it to see what is what the end goals are from where I want to aim to have those measurements at. Wes, I've got your question here. Let me read through it. I'm wanting to start a mealworm farm. How many would you recommend to start with? I've got 8 hens and about 20 more chicks in a few months. Also, what do you think about the yellow worms? Would the yellow ones be a good option to start out with rather than the blacks? What are the black worms? So the yellow worms are commonly referred to, that's what a mealworm is. So mealworms and yellow worms are synonymous to me. So what are yellow worms for you versus the black worms? So as far as how to start out, if you don't have any experience with mealworms, start out small. So you already have the responsibility of the 8 hens. You've got the 20 chicks coming that you're taking care of. And then obviously those are going to need some extra attention once they show up until they get stable and big enough. I haven't raised chicks myself, but I know there's a lot to that. But honestly, I would say start small. Start with what you've got maybe time to fit 1 to 2 hours in a week. Get a few thousand mealworms. You can jumpstart your colony by getting some freshly hatched beetles, but you don't have to. What that does sometimes, especially if you're brand new to mealworms, if you get the live mealworms and the live beetles at the same time, you're drinking from the funnel a lot more of knowledge, information, and responsibility, right? There's just a whole lot more to it. And so if you get just the larva, just the mealworms, you'll be able to focus on that stage of their life. Once they start to pupate, then you'll have that to need to take care of and understand. When they pupate, they'll be in that form for about 4 to 20 days or 4 to 19 days, I think is the variance there, depending on environment and whatnot. And then once they start hatching, then you've got your beetles to take care of. And so if you have a lot going on in life, there's nothing wrong with just getting the larva. Starting with that, take your time. You're going to need some patience anyway because mealworms take a while. But I would suggest just a few thousand to get rolling. You don't need tens of thousands. You need to be able to feed about 1 tablespoon of mealworms per day per chicken is really your max. That's going to take a lot of mealworms. And so what I would suggest is just start small. Use whatever containers you have too, right? You don't need anything fancy. You don't need the white dough proofing trays. Those are more expensive than the cement mixing trays. But different infrastructure, different things. You could use Rubbermaid containers as well. So start small, start getting familiar with it. Feed them to your hens. Chicks, you want to wait probably about a week to 2 weeks until they're old enough to be able to get those. And then you can start with smaller ones, the smaller larvae as well. But let me know about yellow versus black worms. Let me know what's on your mind with that one. Katie, how do you determine what mealworms you harvest versus what mealworms you keep for breeding? Size, basically. So when we go through our harvesting process, we'll take trays that are ready to harvest. And ready to harvest is they're out of substrate, and there's just a bunch of frass in there that needs to be sifted out, and then the quantities recounted and put back in trays, versus harvesting, which is also entails getting the sifting out the frass. But it also means we separate by size. And so we've got 3 different sizes we'll separate by. We use a 1/8 inch mesh to separate out any beetles that may have hatched, but more importantly, the pupa. We try to stay ahead of that so that the beetles aren't hatching in the trays that we're going to then harvest at some point, because then if the beetle's there, they're going to lay eggs there. And then that frass isn't something I'm comfortable selling to somebody because it has the potential to have mealworms in it later. Those mealworm eggs are very hardy. And so we'll sift out, we'll use the 1/8 inch mesh to sift out all the pupa and the large ones. Then we'll use a middle mesh, which I am trying to find that mesh size. It's labeled medium on the tray. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't label it properly when I purchased it. So I'm trying to find out what that was. That was from years ago. And so that's our harvestable mealworms. And what we'll do is we'll keep, out of the 1/8 inch mesh, we'll sift that through the pupa sifter, and then let the mealworms fall through. That goes into a tray for pupation. And then from the I think it's not 1/20th. It's smaller than that, or bigger than that, sorry. Maybe it's the 1/12. I need to go back and look. But from the harvest tray, we'll actually just grab those and keep 20% back. We're keeping 20%, in some cases more than that, because I'm trying to grow the colony size. But I'll just take from the harvested so that I can keep the colony going. What I'm doing now is in the trays that are in... Hey, we can go in there right now. Let's go look at that. So in the trays that we've harvested from, stress actually causes those mealworms to want to pupate sometimes. And so in order to not have to deal with picking all those out all the time, what I'm doing now is, for the harvested trays, let's head over here. And total redesign of the room, by the way. We can go through that if we have time. So in the harvested trays, let's take a look here. This one was yesterday. You can see they're growing. I'm trying to find a good option here that I can show you though. This one will work. So let's get some better light. So in this tray, you can see this one was harvested a couple days ago, and you can see there's some pupation going on in here. So these are some new ones because they're white. Here's some less white ones. These are probably 1 to 2 days old. But what you'll notice is they're all collected in the middle there, right? So here's the circle basically where they're starting to collect. And so what I'll do is I'll let these sit, and then I'll just come in and kind of do this and see where that circle ends, and then just grab and go. And all of these, including the pupa, are going to go into the pupation trays. And then whatever's left is harvested mealworms that then goes out the door. So letting these sit for a little while, they'll move and they'll do that on their own, and then you can just collect and grab as you go. All right. Can you tell me the benefits, Lucas, can you tell me the benefits of chicken starter, non-medicated in wheat bran? The benefits of that, benefits of the chick starter, non-medicated is required because the medicated stuff will kill the mealworms. But the non-medicated, it's got different nutrients in it than the wheat bran. So mealworms can survive on wheat bran just fine. But if you wanted to use chick starter, or you have it because you have chickens, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a very hard crumble pellet. So if you can get it loose, then that would be better, or grind it up. It doesn't all have to be ground up, but the smaller mealworms have an easier time eating the smaller pieces or softer material like wheat bran. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's got different nutrients in it. I think it's higher protein than the wheat bran, but it can definitely be used for mealworms. Katie, do you put substrate in with the worms that have been separated? Videos look like it's just worms in a bin. It is just worms in a bin. So what I've noticed is, credit to Velazar, by not putting, let's turn this around, by not putting substrate in here, and not giving them water gel crystals, their pupation rate declines dramatically. And so there's less to clean up later. And so, not very good light here, but you can see, like, again, that ring here, these guys haven't been fed anything since they were harvested. And so they're less likely to pupate once their stress is done and over with. What we're finding is there's not as much pupation when there's no feed or moisture in there. Lots of questions. I love it. All right, let me see if I can catch up. Bryce, have you tried fish grater box to sort out pupa? I have not. What is a fish grater box? I could probably go Google that, but I'm not by the PC. Fish grater box. All right. Wes, I just heard that the black worms are larger and more expensive and harder to come by. I was curious if you experienced with both and which you'd recommend to start with. Thanks for your input. Oh, Wes, are you talking about superworms? I wonder if you're talking about superworms, because they are darker. They are darker. Here, let's turn these around. Turn this around here. So here are the superworms. Maybe this is what you're talking about. So this is a superworm. And you can see it's got a black head, black tail. Let's come over here to the mealworms, and you can see the size difference. Right, so we'll get us a mealworm or two. There you go. Superworm and mealworm. So, there we go. So yes, the superworms are larger. Yeah, I think we're good. The superworms are larger, and they are more expensive. They're more expensive because it takes longer for them to grow to that size. So you've got more feed inputs, you've got more moisture inputs, you've got more time basically that you're having to keep them in a good environment. And then the market for those is really mostly reptile folks, because and fishermen for bait. Because from a chicken perspective, you go through a ton of those for the amount that you raise. And so it's just not cost effective. Mealworms are far easier from a labor perspective when you're doing a bunch of other things than the superworms. So I have them here because I sell live mealworms. A lot of folks want and need the live superworms as well. So I'm trying to get my colony jump started and going again. Those superworms you just saw are from Justin Penfold here in this group. Down at Sunshine State Worms. So I've been getting superworms from him to get my colony going. Had some struggles with humidity and moisture and some other problems. So hopefully I've got those squared away, and we'll see how things go from here. What substrate? Karen, what substrate do you recommend the first of your choice? Wheat bran, because it's easy to sift out of the trays. It's good from all life stages perspective, so the beetles do well in it. The baby larvae can eat it, and then the bigger ones can eat it, obviously, as well. It's also fairly, and I'm going to get people riled up maybe, but fairly easy to get in large quantities. Small quantities, not so much. That's the only downside to the wheat bran. The other thing that I'm playing with and trying to get into rotation is wheat midds, MIDDS. Different nutrient profile. It has a little bit more finer particulates in it that I think is going to be helpful for the babies. And it's a good backup option. It may turn into my primary option just from a cost perspective because it's about 40% cheaper. So we'll see how things pan out. I've got a couple feelers out to try to get some wheat midds. But wheat bran is perfectly good. Steph, a couple of reasons real quick, Karen, on bran versus things like oats or flat oats. Flat oats are very dense, and so they will hold moisture much more readily than wheat bran will. And so it's far easier for folks when they're just starting out. Like, you can get oats in your grocery store, right? So it's easy, it's quick, you get it while you're there. The downside with oats is the moisture retention, and so you'll find mold a lot more frequently because you feed and it kind of goes down into the substrate as the mealworms are moving around and eating it, and it causes folks to overfeed, and then you start getting mold and having problems with it. So, Steph, I remember you saying in a previous live video you use water gel crystals for hydration. What is the process to do this, and what product do you recommend? All right, so let's take a look. Oh, before I flip you around. What did I do with the water gel crystals? Oh, I had to move all the trays. So let me flip you around anyway. So we moved everything yesterday, and I used the water gel crystal as the guide to separate enough. Now I have to find it. It's somewhere in here. There it is. All right, we'll roll that table out of the way. We'll get us some water gel crystals so you guys can see before and after. So these are water gel crystals. It's basically like small little particulates of Jello whenever they're hydrated. Like, you can take this piece here and you can squish it. It gets into smaller pieces, right? So that's what the water gel crystals are. The mealworms and the beetles will eat this, gone. If they don't eat it, it will dry out and turn back into its hard form. Let's go take a look at what that looks like. There we go. So it's just like a crystal looking, and that's got moisture in it, so it's kind of compacted, but these guys are broken up. So it's just like a hard pellet, hard crystal, kind of like rock salt, maybe, is a good one for the US folks that I'm familiar with. And so you just hydrate that with water, it expands and absorbs the water, and then you feed the water gel crystals. From a source perspective, there are two places that I buy from. WaterZorb, and I can't remember, there's a hyphen somewhere in there. I'll post the link as a reply to your question here. Sorry, I have the water gel crystals on my hands. And watergelcrystals.com. I just looked at these this morning, but I'll post a reply here with links to both of those. Been using both of them off and on. I like to have backup options, so I buy from each of them. I think there's a small price difference, but I'd rather have multiple sources so that I've got multiple places I can get from. Okay, awesome questions, guys. Steph, there's your question. Mohammed, my pupa and beetles are small. What could be the reason? Early pupa and beetles were big. They were a very different supplier. They were from a different supplier. Excuse me. It's that illness taking over. My pupa and beetles are small. What could be the reason? Earlier pupa and beetles were big. They were from a different supplier. You could have gotten smaller, like from a genetics perspective, it might have been from a colony that had smaller mealworms. I can't remember. There was a study done at some point around selecting larger beetles in order to get better better sized larvae. The intent was, if they're bigger, potentially they're healthier, etc. I don't know if the output of that was beneficial or not. But I wonder if you are like not feeding enough or not having enough moisture, although in 80% humidity that may not be an issue, but maybe they need more direct moisture. They might pupate earlier just because of stress, and when they pupate early, they're going to be smaller. So then the pupa is going to be smaller, the beetle will be smaller. I don't know if that truly means from a genetics perspective that the offspring of that one is going to be smaller, because they could have grown larger if they were in different conditions. So I would just check and make sure that you've got feed and moisture available consistently. Your goal with your moisture is to have it eaten out of the bin within 24 hours. And then ideally, add more. We feed moisture every 2 days. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll come in, or Ben and Leo will come in. We'll give water gel crystals and we'll spray. So that way you've got good consistent moisture across the board. Julie, welcome. I have my worm farm in my basement, and I'm wondering how everyone keeps the dust from going throughout the house. I don't have the option of moving them out of the house. Build basically a room for them, I guess, and then exhaust that air outside of your home. If you have a window that you could take advantage of, you want to make sure that there's no, like in the U.S., down in basements, it's very, very normal, and you should have this normally, to have air circulation. So you have your exhaust vents that are pushing air into the room, but you also have vents that are pulling that air out. Otherwise, the air getting forced in isn't going to really have anywhere to go, and so it slows that down. So if you have air intake and exhaust, you want to make sure those are covered, because you're literally pulling that air out of that room and circulating it through the house. But then take advantage of, like, if you have a window or like one of those windowsill basement theme windows that you can put or attach an exhaust vent to, or exhaust fan to, and exhaust that air routinely, potentially putting it under negative pressure so it's always pulling air in and pushing it out. That way it doesn't seep into the house at all. That's something I would heavily encourage you, Julie, to get rectified as quickly as possible, because you don't want to develop allergies. You don't want that stuff circulating in the house. Definitely take care of that. If you have questions, or if you have, if you're comfortable sharing pictures with me, shoot that to me, Justin@MidwestMealworms.com. We can try to come up with some ideas and see what we can do from there. Caitlin. Oh, the grow tent. Yes. Grow tent. So, thank you, Caitlin. I'm sitting here looking right at the thing and didn't even connect the dots. So, Julie, grow tent. If you can put your mealworms inside of this, so if you go to Google, Amazon, and just quickly search grow tent, you can get various different sizes. This one's a 4x8x8, but it's got multiple openings, so you can zip open the sides here and get in, and then it's got exhaust things for heat and air and filtration and whatnot, so you could filter the air before you expel it out into the house. A lot of folks that use those are growing plants indoors. We won't mention what plants, because sometimes Facebook doesn't like it when we do that. But if you're growing plants inside, it's a grow tent. And so you can basically build a microclimate in there and then control the dust, filter out before it comes out of there, etc. They're not that expensive either. I want to say that one was like $150, and it's big. So if you have a smaller colony, you wouldn't need as big of one either. Thank you, Caitlin. That's why it's great to have you guys here. Sift outside to keep your worms inside. I'm looking at this on the farm. Yep, perfect idea. I love that. Not yet. You're using a Space Coast mealworm sifter, looking for something more robust. From a robustness perspective, Bryce, let me turn this around. So this is the Space Coast sifter, pupa sifter. Paper towels for later so we can put them in there. What I did to make it more robust is I glued wood in the corners. So what we found is our corners were always coming apart. You can see all this extra glue here from trying to just piece it back together. So I put glued in a piece. This was a piece of trim I just had laying around. It's fancy trim too, like, ooh, right? But anything will do here. I didn't want to cover up much of the actual sifting section, so a triangle would work much better. But I glued this into the corners, and now that thing's much more solid because we banged the daylights out of this to get all the pupa out. So that's what I did to shore up the Space Coast sifter. All right. I'm just kind of moving around here so you guys can see while I'm scrolling. Umar, for superworms, are you feeding them wheat bran? I've got wheat bran, wheat mids, and non-medicated chick starter, kind of all mixed together for the superworms because they need a bit more protein than the wheat bran would provide. All right, let me keep scrolling here. Julie, you live in a cold climate. Would that make a difference? I'm not sure. Would that make a difference for what, Julie? Give us some more context there. Bryce, you can put up an air curtain at the door to keep dust in the room. Just as vent, you can put an inline duct fan to improve the venting when working. Yes, good option there. All right. Let's chat about that guy, Wes. I live in Tennessee. And what would be looking at paying for 2,000 pupa to start out with? Wes, turn you around here real quick. Yes, I ship to Tennessee. 2,000. I don't sell the pupa, so the pupa are a little bit more fragile for shipping, and so it just causes some more trouble than it's worth. So they'll have die off because of the shock that happens in there. But the 2,000 larvae, I think right now are $20, and there's no extra shipping fee to Tennessee. There's some regional shipping things, like if I ship to California, it costs a lot, so there's an add-on fee for that, unfortunately. But to Tennessee, I don't think there's an extra add-on. So I think those 2,000 live mealworms would be $20, and I ship every Monday. So if you order anytime between now and Sunday evening, I'll get that prepped overnight Sunday. Get your label shipped or label generated on Monday. You'll get an email confirmation with the tracking number, and then I ship hold for pickup to reduce the likelihood of issues from your post office to your mailbox, and then the item being put in like your mailbox or front porch and all that fun stuff. So you do need to go to the post office and pick those up. Julie, for venting outside. Oh man, let's see. I gotta go look at the scrolling here is just rough. I live in a really cool climate. Would that make a difference for venting outside? No. So you may have to deal with, depending on what your humidity is down in the basement, you may have to deal with some moisture buildup on the outside vent, but we just need to vent properly. And then if it's cold, then you're going to be, like when you're exhausting, you're going to be pulling in air into that grow tent potentially, or into that area from wherever you have openings, right? So like if you've got windows open, or if you've got a house that's not sealed super well, it's just coming in through random windows and doors, you're going to pull that cold air in. But you're expelling the stuff that's going to give you allergies and problems long term. So I think that's worth it. If you go with a grow tent option, though, you could keep that all internal and not ventilate externally. You just need to make sure you get a really good air filter so that you filter all of that before venting it out of the grow tent into the basement. That would help as well. Mohammed, what should I give my baby mealworms for faster growth? Access to feed. So as long as it's not super dense, right? Like chick starter or chick crumble here in the U.S. Is very dense and harder for young mealworms to eat. They will expend more energy eating. So if you can get something, or grind that chick starter up a little bit, or get things like wheat bran or wheat mids that have smaller particulates and aren't as dense or hard, that would be helpful as well. All right. So I keep teasing this, but let's go ahead and take a look. So this is the Inkbird device. Lots of different values here that it's grabbing. I did have to move it from one outlet to the other, so it's in Celsius right now. You can see that there. Velazar is smiling about that. But what this is measuring, what I'm interested in right now, is the CO2 and then the particulates. And so about, I don't know, like 30 minutes ago,
the CO2 level was much higher. It was up over 1,000, and it was the nice yellow indicator, which is there, and now it's green because it's lower, so there's much more oxygen in here than there was before. And then the particulates here, 2 different values, just 2 different ways of measuring. Again, I need to educate myself about this, but what I can tell you is that when we're in here working, these are 4-digit numbers, not 3-digit. And so the fan is on, things are getting exhausted, and these values are much lower. And they'll continue to go down. I've seen them in the 2 digits before when the fan is run long enough or when we haven't been in here, like overnight. So I think that what I'll probably look at doing is exhausting more frequently to try to keep these down, and then potentially getting an air filter for in here to also help with that. That way I don't have to exhaust and pull in cold air that then has to be heated up, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see what happens. But the saga with this, for those that have been around for a while, you know that I ordered one of these and then it didn't work. I didn't get very good support from Inkbird, and so I sent it back. And I purchased this thing through Amazon, and so I sent it back to Amazon. They then reached out to me through Amazon and sent me a message and said, hey, could you let us know why you did that? We want to try to make the product better and let our teams know what's going on. And so I told them what was going on. It would power off randomly for no reason. And so they reached out and said that it was likely the outlet that I was plugged into. And so they sent me one for free. So this one's free. Sent me one and had me try it out. And sure enough, plugged into the same outlet, it would turn itself off. When I plugged it into a different outlet, it worked just fine. So I don't yet understand why, but this thing has been working consistently when it's plugged into a different outlet. So we're going to keep it here. I'm going to download the data from it, and then I will probably buy one of these because getting support through Amazon, they were responsive, they were helpful, everything was solved. And so I'm not sure why that doesn't happen when you contact them directly, but it's going to do the job for me, which is what I wanted. So, all right. Do you have a good place to order wheat bran from? Yes. Born Feed in Colombia. Like, it depends on what you mean by order from. Like, for me personally, Born Feed in Colombia is able to order in as many as I need. It usually takes about 2 weeks to get in. If you mean like order online, there's not a real efficient way to order wheat bran online in small quantities, unfortunately. Excuse me, it's that illness coming back. Has Reno have a hard time finding his south? No, that's the problem, is the transit, right? And so getting it from me to you. Steph, South Dakota. Who was that? I got wheat mids recently from, I think, a place in South Dakota. I'm going to have to look and see. It's something supply or supplier. I'll respond to this once I go back and find it. If I leave the live right now, it's in my browser history on this phone. So I'll find it and reply here, Steph, because wheat mids work perfectly fine. And actually, I'd like to switch to them. But I need a good, consistent supply of it. If you have a small worm farm, Corbin, if you have a small worm farm in a 3-tier mermaid toad, do you still have to worry about filtering the dust to outside? That isn't something we thought of. Yes, absolutely. So whenever you work your colony, even if it's 3 drawers, even if it's 1 container, when you work that colony to sift out the frass is the tiny particulates, the mealworm poop, right? It's less than 10% moisture. It's kind of like sand, but it aerosols very easily. It's not heavy. So it gets up into the air, and then you breathe it in. If you have allergy-induced allergies, if you have external environment allergies, then insect frass can potentially cause or trigger those allergies. If you don't, you could develop them over time, just from exposure. So, Corbin, think of it like a paint booth, right? So when people are painting cars, you take your car somewhere, and a professional does that because they've got the entire bodysuit, they've got the full face respirator, they're in a contained system, they're cleaning that air before it goes external, because if they do that all the time. And if they do that all the time without that protective gear on, they are going to harm their body. Same thing with mealworms. So you may not have had an issue yet, But over time, you can develop allergies. So you'll get things like difficulty breathing. You could get styes on your eyes or around your eyes. You can break out in hives if the frass lands on you. All different sorts of fun, not good things that you don't want to experience. So always wear a mask when you're working your farm. Try to do it outside if you can. In cold weather, find a garage, crack the door open a little bit, set a fan up to blow it out. Find a way to protect yourself when you're working that farm so that long term you don't develop any issues. Because even with a small one, when you're sifting the frass, and even when you go in and can kind of move things around, open your trays, you're moving that stuff around, the dust is going to get up into the air. Oh, Velazar, I saw a comment that just scrolled around. I wonder the atmospheric CO2 is around 425 parts per million. As far as I know, it's working. I haven't really looked at the data yet because, like I said, I want to say it's only been a week that it's been in here, and before I invested the time into looking at the data, I wanted to make sure it worked properly from a powering on and off perspective, but I guess from a calibration perspective, it could be miscalibrated. It says it comes that way, that it comes calibrated, but I haven't tried to prove that yet. And you guys hear me coughing from the illness that I have. It's not from the farm here, so everything's been exhausted. But that's what's going on there. Bryce, Julie, is it cold? I have negative 21 Celsius right now? Oh my. Wow, yes. So depending on what your environment variables are, very good point, Bryce. You don't want to suck in external air at that temperature. That's going to be not so great. Amy, really excited that only 5 days and have 38 pupa. Way to go, Amy. Keep it rolling. Corbin, thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for coming up, asking questions. That's going to help you, and it's going to help other people as well. So don't be bashful. Keep the questions coming. We are at, quick time check, we are at 42 past the hour. So I can go over maybe a few minutes today if we get rolling with something. And I might actually forget what time it is too. So at the top of the hour, if I am continuing to go on a diatribe about something, please feel free to mention, hey, you've got deliveries to do. But we can go over a few minutes. If you guys have any other questions, pop them down in there. And if I've missed anything, let me know. I did walk away from my PC, so DMs are not coming through, but let me go back there and check. Turn the light off here. Mohammed, which trays are good for handling and daily activities? The blue one that you're currently using or earlier dough proofing trays? Oh, awesome question. So let's turn this around and let's look at the trays in some better light. Let me grab a white tray. I'm using the white trays for storage now, but these are the blue trays. I like them much better for a few reasons. So these are the white dough proofing trays. This is what I used before I bought these blue trays. What I like about these white dough proofing trays, they're only 3 inches tall, the ones I got. You can get them in 6 inches tall as well. Excuse me, sorry. So they're only 3 inches tall, so you can really maximize vertical space. So if you wanted to build a tower for these and slide them in and out, you definitely can. What I did for a long time, though, just from a cost perspective, is I zigzagged them. So you can see just kind of going back and forth, zigzag, to stack them up. I would get to about 14 trays tall, and then have to stop because it just became too much weight. I didn't want to crack the bottom one, and moving them around gets a little bit more prone to issues. I did knock over an entire stack once. That wasn't fun. The downside to these, one, right now in the U.S., these are expensive. I can't recall the current price today, but what these cost, I think it was like $24 or $26 a piece at the peak, and then they started to go back down. So they are fairly costly. But these are white dough proofing trays, very common. You might be able to find them locally from pizzerias, places like that, bakeries. But they work really well as an option because it allows you to maximize that vertical space. The downside is you can see like empty space here where the zigzag is, right? Empty space there, empty space here, empty space here. So from a maximizing perspective, they're not going to maximize. But I went 14 tall, and then I used, you can see in the background there, the blue shelving, metal warehouse shelving. I used that to create a second level in the old farm so that I could stack 14 on that level and go up. So that way I was maximizing some space that way. But these blue trays, I absolutely love these trays. What I love about these trays is the amount of production I can get. So in the old farm, I had 400 of these white trays in the old farm. When I moved to these, I was able to get 700 trays in rotation being utilized. It was wild. And so what it allows you to do is you still have access to each of the trays. So like when these guys are stacked, when you're feeding, let's say you're going to feed your carrots, potatoes, water gel crystals, you're tossing them in on the side here. And you can do your best to, really throw them in there and try to get to the middle. But, you may not get there. And then depending on the configuration of the room, the back of the trays for me, there was a wall. So I couldn't get back there anyway. And so you're not able to distribute the moisture across the bin, so they have to travel further. You have less airflow because you're just letting, there's more barriers, right? Because the air has to go down into this tray, over, and then out. And so there's just not as good airflow in there. These worked perfectly fine. Like, I don't want anyone to be dismayed about, oh no, like these are terrible. From a maximizing perspective, the blue trays are much better. The white trays, I used those for 3 or 4 years and with the business, and it worked just fine. But the other nice thing about the blue trays is lots of ventilation, right? So you can see the holes here, as well as this, holes everywhere all the way around. You can visually see your trays and what's in them. So if there are any issues, you can say, oh, that guy, let's say it's got cleaner crew in it, or it's not producing for whatever reason. There's no larva in here. It was a blank or an accident tray. You do have to unstack, right? You have to take all these 3 off and take that one out. But that downside is very rare. Like the number of times we've had to unstack and restack is probably a handful, if that, in the new farm using these trays. So, awesome trays. Da-da-da. Okay, sorry, I couldn't pay attention to this as I was talking about the trays. What's the most mealworms you would ship in one box? Say a 12 by 12 by 12. That's a lot of math for me to do right now, Mealworms R Us, but I can tell you in a 14 by 10 by 6, I put 10,000 in the summertime. In the wintertime, a 14 or 15 by 10 by 6 will hold 15,000 with proper ventilation. Oh man, sorry. So I would, do the math of what a 14 by 10 by 6 is compared to the 12 by 12 by 12. You're going to have some issues with the 12 by 12 by 12 because they'll be stacked on top of each other more. So like it's just a cube, right? And so with 14 by 10 by 4 or 14 by 10 by 6, they can spread out more horizontally. So could be a difference there. Something interesting for you. What is the hatching ratio over pupal laid? Velazar, I'm not sure. Something interesting for you. What is the hatching ratio over pupal laid? Oh, I'm not sure. I know that it's gotten lower with the humidity getting better or getting lower, taking them out of the grow tent and then reducing the humidity overall in the farm. But I don't know what the actual conversion is there. Once I get things running smoothly and I'm maxed out from a production perspective, I'm still working on that sifter. The metal worker is now putting a quote together to get the sifter working, and then it's just a matter of expanding. Once I do that, then it's going to become efficiency station here, trying to get things better. How much are the blue trays? They were less in price than the white dough proofing trays. So I bought them, two places I got them from. The first batch I bought 1,100 of them from a company in Texas that used them and went out of business. They chose to go out of business. They closed down on purpose. They shifted from producing the mealworms to more focused on protein, making the protein shakes and whatnot. That's where their passion lied. So I bought the 1,100 trays that I initially got from them. And then from somebody in this Facebook group, I was hooked up with Tricycle. Normal standard spelling, tricycle.eco, E-C-O, up in Canada. Alexis, who is a member of this group. So I bought, he works there, sorry. So I bought 2 pallets originally. They shipped, they were here, they were great. I just ordered 3 more pallets. So I'm not going to disclose what my pricing was, but Alexis is there. If you'd like to reach out to him, find out what it's going to cost. It was not ridiculous, right? So like these trays come from the Netherlands. And so getting a cost-efficient option, shipping like 1 pallet of them, which I think is 85 trays, is ridiculously expensive from a shipping perspective. When you buy an entire shipping container, it becomes much more cost-effective per tray, but then you're buying an entire shipping container full, which is, I think, 1,800 of them, something like that. I mean, it's astronomical. Alexis and Tricycle are a much more viable option for me. Super easy experience. They do require that you pay before they ship. However, I have ordered once and received. I ordered again, and am very likely to receive those. I don't have any concerns at this point. Customer service has been great. Alexis is very responsive. So I have nothing but good things to say at this point. Steph, where do you get the blue trays? Tricycle.eco. Velazar, what is the spacing between columns of trays? Let's go take a look. It's 1 water gel crystal container's worth, which doesn't mean anything. So, for me personally, Velazar, what I need to be able to do, where'd the water gel crystals go? Oh man, that made my hand really cold out there. It's chilly today in Missouri. Not negative 21 Celsius, geez. So what I need to be able to do is to get this guy through, right? So you could probably go smaller. It does get a little bit more cramped though, and so that is probably about 20 inches US. And yes, I used my foot to measure that, but it should be pretty accurate. I could get away with a little narrower, but then this becomes a bit more of a pain in the neck to move through, and it slows me down a lot. It frustrates me, and I'll still be able to get, I want to say like 2,000 trays in this room in 2,100 square feet, or I'm sorry, 1,100 square feet, and produce what I need to produce. So that's the spacing in between. And right now, the other thing, let's go back in the back here. I moved everything away from the wall for airflow and just for ease of moving the water gel crystals around and whatnot to speed that up. I'm going to condense this a little bit. I do still want the airflow here, but I'll probably go to half so that I can get more space on the other end to get more trays in the room. And I'll just have to sacrifice the walking back and forth with the water gel crystals. It'll be what it'll be. All right, Karen, so do you make enough money to do this full-time, or do you have a regular job? Awesome question. This is my regular job now. It is this. I did the mealworms on the side from, I started in 2015. Excuse me. I wish I got my water. Started in 2015 for chickens we had at the time, and then in 2017, January 2017, started the business. It was basically my hobby. I didn't have any other hobbies at the time, and so all I did was raise mealworms. I'd go out in the evening after my real job, go out to the farm, decompress a little bit. We didn't have Wi-Fi out in the building for a long time until I started sharing on social, and so I could go out there and unplug basically, and so I did this. And then in October of last year, so a little over a year now, in October of last year, I left corporate America and I'm doing this now. So I have 2 part-time employees and myself. No, I'm not a millionaire, but I'm happy, they're happy, and the business is net positive. So far so good. We'll see how things go in the next few years. 10:54. All right, so we have a few more minutes left. Karen Austin, thank you. Thank you. I'm pretty excited. We'll see where things pan out. I'm going to start in that grow tent. Head back into the office here and warm up a little bit. In that grow tent, I'm actually going to start playing around with black soldier fly.
potentially build out a model for that, get this thing squared away, build that model out, publish it, try to get a bunch of these built up around the U.S. All right. Diane, I see your message there. Okay. All right. If anybody has anything, if I missed any of the above questions or comments, I'll go back through and take a look at them. How do I reach you to place an order? MidwestMealworms.com is the website. If you have any questions or issues, you can DM me directly through Facebook. So I'm using my personal account here in the co-op group. So Justin Meyer. Email is justin@midwestmealworms.com. But simplest way to place an order is to go to midwestmealworms.com and walk through that. And I'll get it shipped out to you on Monday as long as everything's placed by Sunday evening. In some cases, I have been able to, like I've got some people that I know have busy lives, and so they reach out to me Monday morning, and I kind of know they're coming. I try to prep more overnight, so Sunday I'll come in here. I live pretty close nearby, so Sunday I come over, get everything fed and hydrated that needs to ship out the next day, so that they're ready for their travels, and then I package them up on Monday, print out your label on Monday, and then drop them off at the post office. Down to Tennessee, I think that's where you said you were, Wes, if I'm remembering correctly. Down to Tennessee is probably 2 days, might be 3 now with holiday shipping, but I haven't had any major issues this winter season yet. But I think that USPS is going to start to get hammered with Christmas shipping stuff. So there's the potential for that, but with hold for pickup, live guarantee. So if anything happens there, I'll reship without cost to you, and it's just all baked into the overall price of mealworms. All right. Lots of good questions today. I think I need to do much better at making sure we can get into the farm, because you guys had a lot of questions that we could walk in and look at that stuff right there in the farm. So I'm going to try to schedule these better around that so that we can get in there. And please keep in mind, for the folks, we had a lot of talk today around like the frass and allergies and whatnot. Please know that I don't go in that room when it's being worked, when it's not been ventilated, when it's not safe, because I have allergy-induced asthma. I'm basically allergic to every tree in Missouri, unfortunately. Born and raised here, and I can't deal with the trees. But the frass also triggers my asthma. And so if the particulates in there were really high, I would have trouble, difficulty breathing. You'd be able to hear it. I'd need to go get some medicine. So please take that seriously. I did not have my mask on in there because it was properly ventilated. It had not been worked heavily in the last 12 hours. And so none of that stuff was in the air. So, Amy, is your BOGO still going? It's not my BOGO. The buy one, get one starter kits, I think, is what you're referring to, Amy. That's from Max with PNW Mealworms. Sorry, my brain's fried right now. So I think Max still has that deal going on. Check in the co-op group. You can search for Max or search for PNW Mealworms, and his post should come up. Highly recommend you take advantage of that deal. That's an awesome deal from Max, and he's got fantastic mealworms and fantastic beetles. For what we saw, you have very clean air inside. Thank you. Yeah, it's just from being able to walk in there, it's a delayed response Velazar or asthma trigger for me. So the reason I wanted to get that air quality tester is to be able to see that before I go in, right? So the Wi-Fi connection, to be able to see it on my phone, and then to see it visually when I'm in there, so that the random quick trips I take in, I stopped doing that without a mask on, and so now I can kind of see that and have a much better idea of what's going on. Amy, thank you for your ideas. You bet. Happy to have you guys here. All right, we are 1 minute away, so we'll start wrapping things up. Mohammed, this event timing is good for Asia. Awesome. I try to do things at different times of the day and different days of the week. So today was a Friday morning for me. I'll try to aim for different days of the week. And I do try to stick between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. Central. We did do a late session for me, but it was early for our Aussie friends. If we get enough demand for that, I can try to schedule around some family stuff and do that, as long as it's not every other day sort of thing. But I do try to mix it up a bit. An informative session from your side. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thanks for being here, MD. Appreciate everybody coming in. So we'll wrap things up. This will post to the Facebook group. So anything that hasn't been touched on from a Q&A perspective, I'll go back through and look at that. It'll post there with all the comments. We'll have some more of these events. If you guys have anything you'd like to see or do or have done differently, please let me know. Always open to suggestions and feedback. And thank you guys for being active and participating, throwing out ideas. It's really beneficial for everybody here to be able to learn and help each other. So thank you all much. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.